Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn. I have a lot to say about round 24, but we are here to break down round 25. The thing is, I'm off a losing round. We haven't had one of those in probably since June. We went 1-3, and we were 3 tries away from a 4-0 sweep. And that meant that the winning percentage dropped from 59% to 57% in one round this late in the year. So I've got to revisit round 24 for all the talking points, but I've got the scores on the screen. Like, we lose an unders bet. The only way we lose is if we get 6 points scored in the final minute. And of course, the Roosters do score with a minute to go on the sideline. Of course, Walker has been dead-eyed dick this season and only one miss, I think, all year. So of course he drains it from the sideline and we lose by 1.5 points. And then on the Sunday, can I get a try in the last 7 minutes? You might think that's not much time, but like, there is a try scored in the final 5 minutes of every second game. It's like that's right around the 50-50 mark. We had 7 minutes to get a try in a game, and we only needed 3.5 points to get overs. We can't get it. And that's a game where the Knights butchered numerous tries and we lose by 3.5. And then the other losing bet was Warriors first to 20. And look, if you want to tell me you didn't deserve to win that, Dragons had carnage first half and still nearly won, I'll cop that. I'm not saying I should have swept, but given the losses sustained by St. George in that first half, how did they not crack? Like, we've seen teams give up 60 this year. Warriors are at home. That was a disgrace to only score 14 points. I know the Warriors couldn't care less because they won, but how did we not get the back-breaking try late in that game? We did. And then, of course, the one game I get right, we win by a mile with West as an underdog against Manly. So 1-3, it does hurt, and I'll go game by game because there was a lot to talk about. But we've got to break down, of course, 8 matches in round 25. I'll give you the biggest betting factors that you should consider, as well as laying out the ladder implications, of course. I welcome your feedback as always, and I'll include as much as I can. But first, we roll into our round 25 best bets. I've got 4 yet again. I am going Bulldogs plus 6.5 at $1.90, Ladbrokes and Neds down in Melbourne. I just think, still without Hughes, even though I expect Pappenhausen to return, I don't think the Dogs are that far away from Melbourne, and I think they're going to push the Storm to the limit off a couple of bad performances for the Dogs in the last 3 weeks and the disappointing loss last week while Melbourne were heroic, and we'll get to that. I actually still think it's going to be a cracking game Friday night. The Dogs can keep it close. On Saturday, I am playing my Finns plus 1.5 at $1.90 on Dabble. So that's a slight underdog they are against Manly. I just think Manly, I don't want to say Manly's a dead team because I know it's DCE's 350th and Manly could get a revival here. But I do think with a couple of reinforcements back on deck, Garrick's out for Manly, I think it's do or die for the Dolphins. And I've got the confidence there's enough class there to get in and win that one. And maybe Manly still won't show a lot of heart. Like, it's not a guarantee because it's a milestone game that Manly's going to win. I can see how that could occur, but I'm willing to take the Dolphins. I don't believe there should be an underdog there. Then I'm going to lay 3.5 with New Zealand against the Gold Coast at $1.90 sports bet and Dabble. I think it's a revenge spot. New Zealand are still running 4th and will remain in 4th as long as they keep winning. They can control their own destiny to potentially be a favourite throughout the rest of the regular season. 3 big ins for the Warriors as well. And if you saw the Titans play last week, like, they're a side that lacks a lot of ticker. So I'll lay a small number there for a revenge spot for New Zealand. And it's somewhat of a home game if you've ever seen the Warriors and how they're playing on the Gold Coast and how many of the Kiwis get out in force and support their team on the Goldie. And on Sunday, I'm going to go Tigers team total tries over 4.5. So Tigers to score 5 or more tries against the Cowboys, and that's $1.90 on Ladbrokes and Neds. It's 2 teams essentially playing just for fun at this point in the year, though the Tigers still have some slim hopes of making the 8. So maybe there's more motivation for West. That's okay. I want to play their team total overs. The Cowboys can only keep up with you if they're scoring. I like the mix for the Tigers. I like that they're riding momentum and have got some gun players in good form in key positions. So that's the way I'm going to take that one, especially with West at home in an afternoon game. We've got plenty of sharpshooter tips in the chamber this week, and they're all on like different games to what I've picked as well. So we've got nearly a bet on just about every game this round. But I do want to do a rapid round 24 reaction. As someone says, so many tries gone begging in Knights Cowboys. Oh, I'll get to that one, mate. Unreal. But yeah, do you guys appreciate me quickly revisiting the previous round? I know it was better when it was like I came in fresh on a Sunday night. But the thing is, I still usually have one or two things to get off my chest. I've got to address the bets, whether they're good or bad. And maybe it helps to remind us all what happened most recently before we dive in. But inevitably, I do spend 10 to 15 minutes of the show dedicated to the round that was. So let me know if you don't mind that sort of in the structure of the pod, because I appreciate your feedback and I appreciate your own highlights and comments about the round that was as well. So let me know your biggest takeaways, because, I mean, this was a hell of a game and a lot of talking points, obviously. Storm 22 beating the Panthers 18 in extra time. The total was 40.5 on Tuesday last week. And we did talk about, do you just simply play unders because, the intensity between these sides. And I heard that the total dropped down to 39.5 by game day. So imagine getting burned by a 4-pointer in extra time when it's 18 all. Look, so many highlight plays, and this was played at an incredible standard. So I don't want to be negative, but I do have to say the way I saw it, I thought Penrith was on top and in control, and they led by 8 or 10 points in the second half. And there was a period, one of the longest periods of the season, where the ball was in play without a single stoppage. So, no score, no error, the ball never went out, right? One of the longest in play. It was like 11 straight sets, and Penrith was getting on top. That's what they love to do. And Penrith was on the attack when Talangi, it's not his fault entirely, although he should have obviously ate it as he was just hit throwing the pass to his outside man. It pops up. It's an intercept the other way for Xavier Coates. I mean, he can do no wrong, right, with try scoring. And that swung the whole game, even though I don't think that didn't put the Storm in front, but it cut the lead to 4 or 2 points. And Melbourne goes on, obviously, to force extra time and ultimately win. And I think without that play, without that mistake, I think Penrith were going to run over Melbourne. I think Penrith wins it by 2 or 3 tries, right? But that changed everything. And, of course, and that's without Pappenhausen or Hughes and in Penrith. I know Yo didn't play either, right? But that's a massive statement win for the Storm. Obviously, in extra time, Cleary kicks the winning field goal, but you get the controversial moment where Grant milks the penalty. So there's been a lot of debate about this. I would say there's 2 different things that we're arguing. And if you heard Nathan Cleary, he rarely pipes up and it complains, but even Cleary sort of argued, right? But Cleary said it. He actually contradicted himself, Nathan. He said, Harry deliberately ran into Leota because he knew he'd get a penalty. And that's right. So if Harry knew he was going to get a penalty by running into Moses, then Moses did the wrong thing. Because if you knew that standing there could give the opponent a penalty, you shouldn't stand there. So are we arguing about the rule, which is you can't have a blocker, or are we arguing about the ruling that the ref got it right or wrong? Because we all saw Harry Grant milked it. We all saw Harry Grant wrapped his arm around Leota. We don't like it. I don't like players taking a dive. But you can't really blame the ref or the bunker, because that is how they rule that these days. And Grant knew it. He knew exactly what he was doing. So, I mean, I don't know. They do tweak rules. It's late in the season. I don't love that rule. But as soon as it happened, I knew, Harry Grant's he saved him there, because I think it's ridiculous that all the other players have to be out of the way, because I think the dummy half should have an option to just pass to somebody who's going to run it. It shouldn't be completely obvious that everyone's cleared out, so it's a field goal attempt. I don't know why you can't just stand still, but they've made that rule with sleepers or blockers, and that's what it is. And Penrith's as good as anyone of sort of gamesmanship and milking rules to get the best of it to go their way. So as much as I wanted Penrith to win this game, anyone would do the same. Any team that was desperate to win would do the same, try and milk a penalty, basically, which is what Harry Grant did. He had to, because Cleary slotted that field goal, so it's game over if that's not called. And then Melbourne gets the opportunity, and, of course, all eyes are on Munster for a field goal, and Harry Grant then pulls their pants down. And there's some symmetry there. Grant's been on a tear pretty much ever since I tipped him as man of the match in Game 1 Origin, and he had a shocker. He's basically been unstoppable ever since. But, of course, Harry Grant's had, 1 or 2 games this year he's directly cost the Storm, like that Manly game where he ran into the field goal kicker. So, bit of redemption there. Massive win for Melbourne. Stings us as well for our minor premiership bet, because that would have really given us good separation with Canberra on the bye. Your comments there. Dogs sounds good. Try scoring games. Looking for big try scoring multis. Sick of Cleary. Moses Blues 7 from now on. And, the Kangaroos team's going to get picked. I think realistically, Moses and Cleary are going to be on that tour. And yeah, thanks, James. Says he doesn't mind the rapid review. Oh, did I consider either team 1 to 12 for Storm Dogs? I did consider that too, but I think just getting over that key number of 6, I was happy to play the Dogs that way, because we're still seeing games can blow out late, even if they look like they should have been close on paper. We'll move to Friday last week now, where, Dogs Roosters is somewhat of an example of that. But look, Warriors Dragons. So the big story is that, first half, I was on Warriors race to 20. So I never like to see injuries, but obviously when you see 2 Dragons players, and it was Stewart and DeBellin, both gone in to make a tackle in defense, and they head clashed and they both went to sleep. So you've lost 2. And then Hame Sele not long after that. That's 3 forwards. Now, when you lose 3 to a HIA, you do get to enact the 18th man, who was Torrell Sloan. And then I thought, I bet Gutho's got to have to go in the middle. And sure enough, Gutho was playing lock forward in the second half, and Sloan came out and played fullback. But how the Warriors didn't put the Dragons away, you have to say, again, I have misjudged the toughness of this Dragon side. I keep saying, Dragons will fall away this week, they'll fall away this week, and they keep turning up. And it's costing me best bets and winning best bets, right? So, and I think without losing those forwards, I think the Dragons probably win this. And I would say partially shame on New Zealand. Their attack was very plain and very underwhelming. And look, they think they did a great job and they got a gritty win. But you've got to put the opponent away, especially when they lose 3 forwards in the first half. So New Zealand did enough to win, although when Terrell Sloan made that line break with 3 minutes to go, I thought the Dragons were going to pinch this. And honestly, the Dragons deserved to win. So it's a funny one. Dragons deserved that win, but Warriors should have scored 20 points given the circumstances. So I'm sort of salty, but I do also accept I didn't nail the tip. Then Roosters Dogs. I mean, this is just a slap to the face for me, because I said I liked Roosters. I stared at Dogs under 22.5. I think I could only get $1.75. So I do think part of it was just price not available. And I ended up settling on under 42.5. Felt very comfortable about that. And then the Dogs get blown out, and that includes 6 points very late. That really stung me. And the Roosters are red hot. And as a Finns fan, I was really hoping that the Roosters might go down in this one. But the Roosters can beat anyone in the comp right now. And the Doggies got a little bounce back against New Zealand. And now you start to think maybe that's just because New Zealand's not too crash hot. And the Doggies got a bit of a reality check. Though I am on Canterbury this week. So I do see a couple of these losses for the Dogs as, as forgivable. And I know that the Dogs have got more to offer than that. Right. Then on Saturday, I would say I missed a trick by not tipping this as the best bet. Like the Sharks line, what was it? 9.5. And they were coming in off a loss. So you knew that they'd be smarting and they're at home. And the Titans had just played really tough 3 weeks in a row, right? Was it the win against the Warriors? And then you should have beaten Penrith. And then you should have beaten Souths. And all those games went to the wire. So the exhale was coming. But I thought with Tino and Mo coming back in, while the Sharks lost Ramian and Nikora, I thought maybe, there's enough personnel and no pressure on the Titans to make a game of this, but the Titans were awful. The Titans, one of the early tries for the Titans is an intercept try. And if they didn't get that, it would have been a blowout even earlier. Anytime the Titans made a mistake or gave away a penalty, you knew Cronulla was going to score. And it was so simple. Cronulla simply 2 or 3 rucks up the middle and then somehow strip the Titans for numbers and score out wide just time after time. And actually, this could have been a 50 or a 60-point win, but the Titans got the final 2 tries in this game. They just happened to, very little care factor, but just throwing the ball around actually produced some points late and made it look like slightly less of a blowout. But they still lost by 32 and were awful. And Cronulla remains under the radar. the Sharks are like $3 or $3.50 to make the top four. I'm going to talk about top four odds, right? The Sharkies are as good a chance as Penrith or New Zealand. Like, it really is a 3-horse race for top four. And I feel like nobody's really looking at the Sharkies, though they did lose Cam McInnes with an ACL. Geez, he's a tough hombre. Played like for the rest of the set, but that is going to be a loss that's felt moving forwards this year and of course next year. Okay, then this one I got to talk about, Broncos Dolphins. Like, this was an awful weekend for me because every game I tipped, like, something went wrong and we lost basically every game by one try. And then the other games where I didn't tip, like, I wanted Penrith to win, so of course they lost in Golden Point, and of course I wanted the Dolphins to win, and I said the only way I'd bet it would be Brisbane, and it was level scores at halftime. And then the Dolphins come out and score first set of the second half and hit the Broncos again soon after that, scoring under the post. And basically, the Dolphins are up 14 points in the second half. And it doesn't matter who you're playing against. Like, you just should never lose when you're up more than 2 converted tries in the second half. And I know earlier in the year, the Dolphins lost a game where they led West at home by 10. That still stings me to this day because the Dolphins might miss the finals by points difference or by 2 points, and you're going to look back at games you had won, and this is the most important game of all. And look, Walsh has not consistently, dominated the competition the way he's capable of for arguably for the last 2 years. But of course, he saved his best performance probably in 2 years for Saturday night. And with no man, with no Reynolds, Brisbane needed it. And Walsh had turned the game. I mean, his 40-20 was the turning point for 4 straight Brisbane tries. Look, I loved moving Trey Fuller to fullback and playing Hammer in the centres. I know you're losing what Hammer can do at fullback, but he's still a weapon in the centres, scored the first try. And, of course, Trey Fuller, is a smaller body, really can only play fullback, and I love having that extra threat out there. And this is what I've said about the Dolphins, that I don't have a lot of faith in my team about displaying a heap of toughness. We don't have a lot of cattle in the forwards. We can't defend for a long period of time. Like, Penrith or Melbourne can play an arm wrestle game with you. They can arm wrestle you for 20 or 30 minutes, and they might outscore you 6-0 in that 20 or 30 minutes, but they've also sapped your petrol. The Dolphins are not going in an arm wrestle for 30 minutes with anybody and beating them by a try. The Dolphins need to get hot and score 3 tries against you in 10 minutes, and then the Dolphins will probably give up 1 or 2 in the next 10, but they'll still come out ahead by a try. Like, that's how the Dolphins win. So I knew that, it's a huge momentum type game. The Dolphins harnessed, I thought, enough momentum to win it. But I have to say, as much as I love him and he's one of the best players in the world, the Hammer got burned too many times at centre. He got a bath from Katoni Staggs. Hammer got sucked in multiple times to Walsh. And, you've got to trust your inside man's going to handle Walsh, because Hammer just got sucked in, and then Walsh releases the pass usually to Staggs, and then Hammer couldn't recover. And you'd think someone so athletic, like what you see Stephen Crichton do, he kind of hedges his bets, puts pressure on the inside man, but then recovers and always covers his man. Well, Hammer had bad misses on Katoni, and that accounted for probably at least 3 Brisbane tries, or certainly clean line breaks that led to tries. The new halves combination sort of really bared fruit in the second half, especially Benny Hunt and Walters having a hand in one of the tries of the season. Like, for a Brisbane perspective, it's an amazing comeback, and it gives you a lot of hope and life for the remaining month of the season and of course, into finals, and keeps Brisbane with a sniff of top 4, but certainly a good chance of finishing top 6. And that would mean playing at Suncorp, even if it's an eliminator. And as a Dolphins fan, I've got dreams of, getting to 7th, and maybe we get round 3, Brisbane Dolphins. But that really, really stung to blow that lead late, and just Brisbane just caught fire right when I didn't want him to. Because Walsh, he's a bit rocks or diamonds. He's had some rough games this year, but of course, saved his very best when Brisbane really needed it as well. I don't have much to say about Rabbitohs Eels. Latrell was a late scratch. Cody Walker did play. Tallis Duncan, awesome. Jai Gray, unreal. And it was anybody's game. And the Rabbitohs, actually, have gone from losing 9 in a row to actually back-to-back wins. So they will avoid the spoon, which is going to sting me because I did tip them for the wooden spoon preseason. For Parra, it's sort of meaningless. They're trying to play positive footy for the final month of the year. Yeah, they'd be disappointed they lost, but they'll get over that one. Then on Sunday, we had West Tigers. I took first half line. It wouldn't have mattered, though, if I took full-time line, of course. They were outright winners, 26-12. And that's after the Seagulls scored the first set of the game, like 30 seconds in. Kohler broke about 7 tackles and scored a try, which is not ideal when you've played a first half line, but we still led, I think, 12-6 at the break. Manly are awful. Manly didn't score again until the 79th minute, so Manly was dominated throughout. West looked great. And as I predicted, that line did crunch in from 4.5 to 2.5, but that was a wrong team favoured game. West, the only question probably going in was Manly's playing for their season. Wests are like a mathematical hope, but off a bye, Wests are still trying hard for Benji, and Wests have more talent than Manly right now, and that's why they won. And then Cowboys Knights, 38-4. It's a blowout win. Like a blowout was very possible when I previewed the game and I played over 45.5, but you usually still get overs in blowouts, and you usually still get 1 or 2 soft tries by the team that gets beaten. Like look at Titans Sharkies. There's nearly 80 points in that game, and somehow the Knights, it's unbelievable how many tries they butchered. What's the fullback's name? Catano. It was a certain try, like 2-on-1 draw and pass, and it was actually an awful pass by Cogger behind him, so he dropped it. Saifidi, all he had to do was put the ball down, and it's just lodged as he's falling between the posts. The Knights had another certain try. It might have also been Saifidi, and he was tackled without the ball, which maybe that's a penalty try, but it was only given a sin bin. Of course, Knights didn't score. Later in the game, the Knights have another 2-on-1, and this time the fullback on debut just leaves it behind, right? And we only needed one more try, of course. Of course, the game I play overs, where I rarely play overs, of course, it's like more butchered tries than you'll ever see. Like it's just a procession of points left on the table. So, yeah, thanks very much. And again, I told you that would take me 15 minutes, and it did. So that's sort of how I saw round 24. But now let's roll into round 25. And it kicks off Thursday night. And it's no grand final rematch, but we'll talk about each and every game anyway. Sometimes you can still find some good bets, though I don't have one in Rabbitohs Dragons. Now, let me just adjust my screen size. You see less of me. You see more lineups. Everyone wins. You've got enough of the teams there. Yeah, Dragons, Rabbitohs. The line is +2.5 or +1.5, depending on where you look. So close to pick 'em in some places, but Rabbitohs are moving into I think the Rabbitohs moved into a 2.5-point favourite, but I wonder if it's bounced back to 1.5 with Latrell remaining out today. So, look, South again. As soon as I said that, they might win the spoon, they've won back-to-back. And last week's win was without Latrell. As I said, he was a late scratch. He remains out. Cody Walker did come back. Hubner is also in this week, and Kaloa Matangi bolsters the pack further. The Dragons, of course, have lost Stewart, DeBellin, and Sele. They were all the Cat 1 HIAs. You tell me who wins this game, as Stephen Gerrard says. Nobody knows. Because I find it hard to pick as well. Murdoch Masilla is getting a start. Laurie is back on the bench. Sloan, who was an activated 18th man last week, is on the bench for this too. Johnston, we all were looking forward to him breaking the record, and Souths issued a warning last weekend, do not storm the field. He still needs 3 tries just to equal the record, and Souths had the bye next week, so it's a little bit of an anticlimax. I'd love to see him do it. You know what I'd love to see? AJ gets a couple this week and breaks it against the Roosters, and Souths beat Roosters and kick them out of the finals. But that could be a bit greedy, but that's wishful thinking from me. But again, this is a tricky game. I don't want to dwell on it for too long. Could the wheels fall off St. George? Yeah, sure. I've been saying that for the last month, and they keep giving maximum effort week in, week out. So I'm not going to take on the Dragons again. If the Dragons were a favourite here, like they were 2 days ago, maybe I'd play Souths, right? But it's a flipped favourite now where the Dragons are an underdog. And I understand why. Souths have got this positive momentum. You look at what Jai Gray's doing there. Tallis Duncan, man, unreal. Filling in at centre, and that's where he'll line up again this week. I just think Souths have got a little bit more polish. than the Dragons. Potentially a little bit more energy for the Souths too, just because they keep getting good players back as opposed to Dragons who are hanging in there and losing guys. But it is a game where there's nothing to lose really for either team. So it's an extra element of unpredictability, I would say. And that makes it harder to back, and that's why I'm going to stay out of it. Although we have a special treat because Benny Howard was able to get a clip to me this week, and he's on this game.
Hey, TryPod fans, Benny from Benny the Bets, giving you the live TryPod preview tip. This week, I'm going with the Dragons under 20.5 team total. I tipped this earlier at 24.5, but I did think the market would slowly bring it down as the week went on, so I had to get on it early. Basically, I think it's going to be a slow track down at a core, heaps of rain down in Sydney. I feel like the Bunnies have been playing really tough the last few weeks. They've kept it into a bit of a grind. And yeah, I just feel like the Dragons will probably accept that sort of type of game as well going down there. I also think the Dragons probably don't have as much to play for anymore, whereas the Bunnies, they're still sort of fighting and wanting to get a few wins as they haven't got too many this season. So yeah, I think it should be a low scoring one. And probably pretty close, maybe a golden point sort of winner sort of game. So we'll see. Gamble responsibly.
So Benny liking Dragons unders there. I can definitely see that. We move to Friday. This is a cracking doubleheader. It begins in Mudgee. Penrith are a 3.5 point favourite against the Raiders. Now, I warned you a week ago, just because Penrith climbed all the way to 4th, from 17th to 4th, with 9 straight wins and a couple of buys, that didn't lock in that they are going to finish top 4. It was far from secure. And I mentioned this already in the recap, but looking at the odds, Penrith are still the favourite to make the top 4 out of the contending teams, but they're a $2.50 favourite. So a $2.50 favourite means you're more likely than anyone else outside of the top 3, of course. But you're not more likely than not. You're still at worse than a 50-50 chance, So Penrith doesn't control their own destiny. Penrith, $2.50, Warriors about $3, Sharks $3.50. So I use the term three-horse race. Brisbane, ironically, being a horse logo, they're $7. Like, they're not done yet either. And I think Brisbane, very winnable games ahead. Sharks, winnable games and a bye ahead. Warriors, all their games are very winnable. Penrith, the best team of those, but the toughest games as well on their remaining slate. And so, of course, all those teams I just mentioned will be cheering for the Raiders on Friday night, who are off the bye. An update that Canberra are $1.75 for the minor premiership after Melbourne's somewhat unexpected win at Penrith. We didn't need that. As I mentioned last week, everybody who's in the top 4 is really motivated to beat Penrith to keep them out of the top 4, because you don't want to play Penrith in week 1 of the finals, right? So there's extra motivation for Canberra, as well as trying to lock in top 2 and potentially a first minor prem since the early 90s. Isaiah Yeo is in the reserves. I do feel it's likely he will play. Tell me in the comments. I've got this feeling that, as Ryan says, it's a sellout Mudgee. Is Isaiah Yeo from Mudgee, or am I getting it mixed up? Is he a Dubbo boy, or you tell me? But either way, it's a very important game. And it just sounded like Yeo was close last week. So that's why I'm sort of sensing that he will definitely join the team this week. Canberra selects the same side that dispatched Manly before a bye week. Remember how numerous times earlier this year I kept saying, man, Canberra's got to be the most tired team. They waited over 3 months before they got their first bye. They waited longer than everyone else, but it's paying dividends now. They get a bye like every 3rd week on the run home to the finals. Might get a bye week in round 27 if they've sewed up the minor prem. They could basically elect to give themselves a bye week and just not play their stars. I wouldn't mind that because they play the Dolphins in round 27. Ryan says Mitch Kenny's from Mudgee. Maybe that's who I mixed it up with. Sorry. Look, if I had to bet this game, I would play Canberra. But as you know, I'm not on for a best bet. It's not that Penrith lost and so the 9-game winning streak snapped and the momentum is snapped. It's just that, I think the Raiders are ripe for a big one here. Whereas I'm looking at Penrith, they've been on full tilt for over 2 months. It is hard to bring it every single week. As Ryan says, yeah, as Ayo from Dubbo. What does Broncos say? Panthers will win, you'll see. Look, if I thought Canberra would win, I'd be on them for a best bet because I could catch 3.5 points. And look, if the line was 4.5, I'd probably play the Raiders. As it currently stands, I'm leaving it because what would happen is if you play Canberra today, then it'll be official that Yo's in, let's say tomorrow or the day after, and then the line could actually creep out to 4. So I'd probably wait if I was going to play Canberra because I think Yo's going to get in. And, you've got to be brave to go against Penrith. It's a must-win game for Penrith. If Penrith lose this, I think they will miss out on top 4. So it's like a finals game come early, which is a good test for Sticky's side. But if you think of this game as a finals game, we're all going to agree that the experience heavily favours the Cats. And that's why Penrith should be favourite and why I haven't bet into this one, though I cannot wait for it. And I said it before, this is one of the double headers of the year because that's your Friday 6 p.m. And then we roll into Melbourne at 8 p.m. for Storm Bulldogs. The line is 6.5 in about half the bookies, and others are at 5.5. And my best bet is plus 6.5, $1.90, Ladbrokes, Neds, and Dabble. So the Storm, of course, are off that overtime win in the grand final rematch. Munster started at fullback. Now, I did tip in the group that I heard Pezzett was going to get a good shot at 7. And I thought, well, in that case, maybe you move Wishy to fullback. But it was a bold call by Bellamy to put Munster back there. However, though Munster, as you will see, is named fullback again, Pappenhausen is in the reserves and he's just got to overcome a concussion and he's got the time to do it. So I dare say Pappenhausen's going to be your fullback. The Dogs have no changes from the side that was well beaten by the Chooks, but Tupanua is a shot of returning from a hammy and Montoya from his circumcision. So we'll monitor those. It's a big game for Melbourne to put a bit of separation between second and third and ensure that path to a prelim goes through Melbourne for the home side. But I am going to play the Dogs with this line above 6 because there's still no Jerome Hughes. Now, I know I keep saying that, right? But here's the thing. To me, Melbourne are the clear best side in the comp at full strength. But when you're missing your Dally M medalist, yes, Melbourne might still be the best team in the comp even without Hughes, but it brings Melbourne closer to the pack. I don't think the line should be over a converted try. I know people will say, oh, Melbourne's got better forwards. I don't necessarily agree with that. When you look at Preston and Kickout, I think that's your best combination of second rowers in the competition. Yeah, Melbourne's got superior middles, but the Dogs can still hold up there. Of course, the hottest hooker in the world. Ryan saying Grant should be out. Did I miss that news? That seems pretty important. But do your research on that one, guys. Let me know if there's like any rumors going around that I haven't got wind of. I'm factoring in Grant playing. And I'm still playing the plus 6.5, right? So yeah, you give the Storm the edge with middle forwards, but I would say the Dogs have the better back line, considering there are still key outside backs who are on long sideline stints for the Storm. So yeah, what it boils down to is Melbourne should be a favourite. I thought the line would be 5.5. At 6.5 and 6 being a key number, I'm going to play it. This Dogs team's lost 2 of the last 3. I think that's put them on the nose with some people, but I think that means that they're primed to, play one of their strongest performances. Yes, it will be a great test for Galvin and Burton trying to break down Melbourne, but I really do think the boys from Belmore are going to make the Storm sweat the whole way. So 6.5, if I think it's going to be a cracking game, give me those points. Let's move to Saturday. Manly against the Dolphins, a big game, and of course, especially for me, given that my team is, on the slide and on the precipice, really, and it's essentially a pick'em game. But I have played plus 1.5 with $1.90 on Dabble, so I've got that DCE fairy tale insurance. If it was a 1-point win for Manly, I still wouldn't be happy, to be honest, because the Finns need the win here. But let's talk about Manly. Since winning in Melbourne, how'd they do that again? A month ago, Manly won in Melbourne, and they've fallen off a cliff since then, right? Big loss to the Dogs. We were on for a best bet. Big loss to the Raiders. We were on for a best bet. Big loss to Roosters. We were on for best bet, right? And then Raiders the week after. And then they lost to the Tigers. You noticing a trend? We were on for a best bet. So I've been telling you guys all season, Manly's not that good. They won't be playing finals. I smelt that rat, right? But having said all that, and I'm against Manly again, it will be at least 5 straight weeks with fading them. I know it's DC's 350, and I know that struggling sides can still step up for a big occasion. I'm very concerned that could happen. I'm not going to be shocked if the Dolphins lose this, right? Like I can see at Brookie, Manly gets up for this because DC is a club legend. But Garrick is out. Gerbo's probably out for the season. The Finns get back Kalfusi and Molo. That's experience and muscle. Hammer is named at fullback because Fianei is in at centre, but I don't know. Fuller on the bench, I don't know what he does there. I reckon the Dolphins will go again with Fuller at fullback and Hammer in the centres potentially, even with those defensive deficiencies. I still like that makeup. And look, the Dolphins could be a bit deflated. They blew an almighty opportunity. Like you're playing your biggest rival, your big brother. You're up 14 points in the second half. You've just scored a couple like 14 points in 8 minutes or whatever. And then you capitulate, give up 4 straight tries in about, I think at one stage Brisbane scored 3 tries in 6 minutes or something like that. I could understand the Finns being in shock, right? But what I will fall back to is the Finns are too good to go out for the rest of the year with a whimper. The Finns deserve to play finals footy, and a win will actually put the Dolphins back in the finals frame, albeit maybe momentarily. It's hard to catch the Roosters when the Roosters might be the form team of the comp, but the Dolphins know that there are a few things in the schedule that are going to be pretty handy. Like the Dolphins play the Titans next week. That's probably the best opponent if you could cherry pick one. And again, I'm probably jinxing and we'll probably lose to the Titans, right? But Dolphins play the Titans next week. The Roosters play the Storm in Melbourne. So you couldn't ask for a tougher game for the Roosters. And there's something else that I'm very aware of in round 27, and I've sort of already touched on both of these circumstances, but I'll just lay it out again. Souths are going to be off a bye, and I think the Souths will set up that rivalry game against the Roosters as their own grand final. Like, Latrell should be back. Cody Walker's back now. I think Whiten might have served his suspension. And there's even talk that Cam Murray could play, which is kind of insane because he's missed the whole year. But imagine if he just came back for that game, right? So everyone thinks that the Roosters will definitely win round 27, but they might not necessarily. And then if you just on face value, you would say, well, the Dolphins won't beat the Raiders. But I think the Raiders are unlikely to send their stars up to Queensland for a Sunday game ahead of the finals, unless the Raiders really need that win. So there could be a serious swing of fortune in the Finns' favour in round 27. But the only way the Dolphins get themselves in that situation is to win the next 2 weeks. Okay, so that's what the Dolphins can control. Now, will Manly lift? Potentially, yes. I'm not expecting Manly to roll over here, but things have gone a bit sour too. Like deep down, are the Manly players' hearts really in this? You'd say you want to lift for DCE, but it is the same guy that said I want to leave, earlier this year, which has somewhat derailed the seasons. And as much as Manly might want to win, Turbo is 80% speed at best. Gerbo is the heart and soul of the team. He hasn't been good this year, and he's missing Ola Kawatu, who's probably their best player outside of a healthy Turbo. He's out. Garrick's the goal kicker and has been pretty good this year, right? So it's not that I'm saying the Dolphins can't lose, but I feel a good amount of confidence that with the speed and sharpness of Katoa, Hammer, Avarillo, Fuller, Nicarima, Marshall King, the way Donohue's ball playing, that I like the Finns' chances, and I'm getting them as an underdog as well. But I do think that the Dolphins will win the game. I'm saying they win it 60% of the time, right? I'm not saying it's a sure thing. And I'm a Finns fan, so, factor that in. I don't tell you I'm confident every week, though. Like, I wasn't really confident the last 2 weeks, and I got my heart broken last week especially. Let's move. Oh, sorry. There's a play on this game in addition to mine, and it's from The Undertaker. So once again, he's weighing in with the best bet. He won last week, fading his own Sea Eagles. So let's listen to which side of the equation he falls on.
G'day guys, Matty here, in a bit of form of 3 consecutive wins. Want to keep it going to finish the year strong. I'm going to actually go a try scorer for my bet of the week. I haven't done one this year, we'll have our first. It'll be on my guy, Tolu Cooler for Manly, $2.20 on TAB. Been a miserable experience being a Manly supporter the last month. Not much to cheer about, not much to smile about, but this guy's been about the only ray of light we've had to enjoy. Cooler's actually scored 8 consecutive tries at Brookie Oval, so he loves scoring there. He's actually loves scoring everywhere. He's just scoring every week. $2.20 jumps off the page for me, so on a tight week of lines, let's just go some value there. Good luck.
So Undertaker is backing a man on his own team this week. Look, Kohler's a dead set superstar, and like that try he scored last week was pretty special. I can't deny that. Let's move to Saturday later. This is later Saturday night, or Saturday sort of twilight game. Titans Warriors at Seabus. The line is -3.5, and that's the play I'm on. I'm laying it at $1.90. Again, dabble, and it's on Ladbrokes and Neds as well. And the Titans were pea-hearted in the Shire. I missed a good play there, but again, I thought you're adding Tino, you're adding Mo, you might add some spirit. Evidently not. Now Jolliffe is out. Cleese Haas returns and he goes to the bench, and Brian Kelly is back and into the centres. Warriors, again, you have to say they were underwhelming, but they won ugly. From their perspective, that was all that was required. The Warriors control their top 4 destiny. Like, nobody really thinks much of the Warriors, and it's not necessarily disrespect. It's obviously because you lost your 2 form players in Barnett, followed by Metcalf. So people probably think that that New Zealand's not going to trouble anybody in the finals. But look, get yourself into the top 4. Anything can happen. Even if you lose week 1, you're still hosting the eliminator in week 2 of the finals. And, generally would say New Zealand always have a chance when they play at home in a big game, even though they didn't play well enough last week to win my best bet. And 3 big inclusions as well, with Capewell, Tamari Martin, and Rocco Berry all returning. I got revenge for the Warriors, who lost at home to the Titans just a month ago. My only reservation is I'm betting against the Gold Coast, and they are the biggest self-saboteurs. Is a saboteur a word? Oh, I think so, rather than sabotages, right? But nobody shoots themselves in the foot as much as the Titans, right? Now that I'm going against the Gold Coast, watch them probably play flawless and play their best game of the year. But look, if I'm going to back a team and the season is on the line, then I know I should get best effort. And it's not totally an away game, because there will be more Warriors fans at Seabus than Titans. And I do think New Zealand's the tougher side. Like, if the game swings, inevitably it will, New Zealand can absorb some pressure and defend sustained attack. I don't really believe the Titans can do the same. I know New Zealand doesn't really have the firepower to blow anybody away unless Dez's troops just totally fold. But I still think New Zealand's just going to keep coming all day and win it by at least a try. So I'm laying 3.5. Move to Saturday night. Eels, Roosters. Roosters are a 10.5-point favourite. It's a little setback for Para losing to Souths, but they're just playing for pride and improvement. Ayongi did come in and played fullback. Papali slotted in at 6, and that's how it remains this week. The Roosters are red hot. They do lose Tupou. Everyone's talking about Coates and what a weapon he is in the air. Tupou's pretty much the same. It's like a little bit of a cheat code. You get to 5th tackle, and if you can put a bomb, and not even necessarily like a traditional bomb, but just any sort of little chip kick on the money for the left winger, nobody can get above Tupou, and you can't tackle someone in the air. So it's pretty unstoppable. However, say all that to then say Tupou is out this week. Wong does come back from concussion. I'm not getting in front of the Roosters. They've worked hard to get themselves into the top 8. They won't want to relinquish that spot, especially knowing that they have to go down to Melbourne next week. You've got to make sure you win this one that's winnable, because if the Roosters play their best footy, they'll win this week. If the Roosters play their best footy in Melbourne, they could still lose, right? So you've got to take care of business in these sort of spots. But the bookies are well aware that the chooks are clicking. They see the class all over the park for the tricolours. That's why this line is double digits, So I don't think I'm getting value if I lay -10.5. I look at Para. I think Brown is a bit wasted at centre, but it's still better than leaving him out. I've talked about the young fullback at 5'8". I've got class in players like Moses and Lomax, and they both want to stamp their kangaroo tickets as well. And yes, the Roosters have the better forward pack, and that's why they're a double-digit favourite. They should run over Riles' men, but again, the line's just a little bit too rich for me. I predict the Roosters win pretty comfortably. As a Finns fan, I'll be cheering for the Chooks to slip up against the Eels. Not too confident, but Padonis does have a play on this game. So let's listen to how he sees it.
G'day guys, Padonis here. Hope you're all safe and well. Had the week off last week. Couldn't get a video out in time, but we're back for round 25. We're sitting at a 15-5, 75% clip on the live show so far, which is a fantastic to date. So hopefully we can keep it going with a few rounds left in the regular season. We're going to take an underdog this week that not many people are going to favour, and that's going to be the Parramatta Eels at plus 10.5, and that's $1.83 on Sportsbet. Just think this is a classic case of two teams in perceived opposite directions where the market gap is a little bit too big. I think it's also a classic environment, situational spot for the Roosters coming off consecutive big games where they had to win to keep finals going. They finally got over the hump. They're looking like finals are likely. They're not all the way there yet, which is why that the market sort of favoured them a little bit too heavily in a must-win scenario for the Roosters. But looking ahead to next week, they've got the Melbourne Storm on the docket. So I think this could be a little bit of a flat spot for them on what was their best performance of the season last week against the Bulldogs. And Parramatta Eels, we know that they've been showing commitment and fight under Riles, especially this last month. Only look back a fortnight ago, they were a 9.5-point underdog against Melbourne. So are we really ready to say that the Roosters are better than Melbourne without Hughes in the side? I don't think so. I think Parramatta put up a fight here. They're going to give it their all. And I do like some of their weapons. Daniel Tupou's out. They can counteract that aerial threat because he exploited it so brilliantly last Friday night. And I just think this game could go either way. I'm expecting the Roosters to win, but definitely do it tough. Won't have it all their own way like they did last Friday. But good luck and gamble responsibly.
I like the case Padonis makes there. Interesting comparison to the Melbourne line. Only thing that jumped to my mind was it was bucketing rain when the Eels played Melbourne, so that that did suppress the line a little bit. But look, makes a fair argument for a team that's still fighting. That's the difference. I don't mind laying 10.5 with a strong team that's surging towards finals late in the year, but I like to look for the teams that might just be ready to give up, and that's a good segue to Sunday with the Knights playing Brisbane, and it's a 10.5-point line in this one as well. And I said this like a week or two ago. O'Brien in his press up, he talks about, this team has no quitting and we're not giving up. And this was after they lost the second half to Canberra 26-0. And the following week, they played at home to Penrith and got smashed by 30. And the following week, they played North Queensland and got beat by closer to 40. That's the team that hasn't given up, right? Brody Jones is out. Crossland starting at 9 in this one. Gajewski was injured for the Broncos. Jaden Hunt starts at second row. Vitano, I know it was his first ever game. I don't want to be too harsh and call him the try butcher. But if he could catch, if the Knights could execute a catch and pass, we win the best bet there. So yes, I am still a little bit salty. He remains at fullback and he's facing off against Walsh, who's off his best performance of the year, as I mentioned. And getting back to O'Brien, because I do listen to coaches and what they say in the conferences and try and glean something out of it. I missed a trick as well because O'Brien specifically said after the Panthers loss, we really need to show up for our supporters. We are very aware that, we've got, when we play at home next time, we need to be better. And then he goes, we do have an away game before that. But you almost sense that Newcastle, they know the season's lost, but they just want one more good home effort. And so that away game, in retrospect, and I thought the care factor could be low, and that's why I played overs. But clearly, in hindsight, I should have played Cowboys overs. So I am a little bit wary in this game that the Knights could actually play all in because they're in front of these fans that are the most loyal in the competition, right? They're long-suffering Knights fans. And maybe Newcastle will treat this a bit like their grand final. But on the other hand, it's what I would call a live team in Brisbane. Brisbane still believes they can make a prelim, make a grand final. They've got the team to get them into the finals, to get them top 6, can beat someone in eliminator, or still an outside shot of getting 4th. Reynolds and Mam aren't out for the season, so you add them back in. Right, there's belief for Brisbane. There's still some gun players in this team, but where's the belief coming from for Newcastle. And I'll tell you, I literally wrote down a best bet and then I deleted it. I second guessed myself and took it off, right? So the best bet I was going to play was simply Brisbane minus 9.5. It's $1.88 on Dabble. I think it's over 10 everywhere else. So I could have got a single digit line. And you guys know one of the greatest bets you can make is something I almost played and then I left alone. So you're welcome. I don't hold anything back. Even if I don't play something as a best bet, I tell you what I strongly considered. So you can, action as much information as I share each game as possible. So the reason I then decided to press delete is I do feel Brisbane's perhaps a bit too public. Everyone is off the Knights after last round or after the last couple of games. It's still a new halves combo for Brisbane. Like, yes, it did click second half last week. It doesn't mean that they're going to be all guns blazing this round. And I know like a 2-try win's not asking a lot, but it gets back to, do I want to be on the team that Jim and Joe are going to be backing with their Sunday same gamers? I'll leave it, even though I'll be surprised if Brisbane doesn't win against this soulless Knights squad. I am wary that the Knights will actually come out and fight really hard in this game, and Brisbane won't get it all their own way. That's why I left it. But just because I left it alone, you don't have to. If you're looking at this game and you see there's no other scenario than a Brisbane big win, 9.5 still available on Dabble, and that leaves us just one game to cover. It's nothing too special. Tigers, Cowboys, but I do have a best bet on this one. I played Cowboys over 4.5 team tries. West are mathematically still alive. They have come in off back-to-back wins, and they've no changes from their winning formula. The same 17, same for North Queensland. Not about being mathematically alive, but off a resounding win and no changes in the team list. So I do struggle with games where there's not a lot on the line because I try to visualize the contest somewhat. But if I'm not sure that both teams are really bang up for it, then that can just change the change the equation so much. So I've got a Cowboys team that did bring intensity down to Sydney a fortnight ago when they played the Eels. Will they do it again? It was a tight loss on that occasion. I don't know whether the Cowboys, are going to fight hard and bring it in this one. Whereas for West, you would feel there's a genuine spring in the step. And what I like about the Tigers and why I have played them to score 5 or more tries is they've got serious, slick points of attack. Since Buller came back in, he's a real threat. Dewey at 7, I love that. You got Fainu on the bench. You got sort of like the offload ability. You got multiple sets of brothers in the team. They sort of know what each other's thinking. You got Luai is a bit more freed up. Appy is in there as well. So I told you like a week ago, I thought they would beat Manly. They're riding momentum, which does matter at this time of year. That's why I like West. And then why I like overs is because there's not that much at stake, even though mathematically Tigers want to win. But there's not much at stake for Cowboys. So you sort of feel they'll play some free-flowing footy. And the Cowboys game should have gone over last week. The only reason it didn't was the ineptitude of the Knights. It's a day game. I don't see this finishing 18-16. I think it's going to be closer to 28-26 to somebody, So the only way the Cowboys keep this close is their scoring. But I don't really trust the Cowboys' defense. So I have I've played over 4.5 tries for the Tigers. Benny Williamson did not have time to send in a best bet, but he did, or he didn't have time to record a clip, but he did send me a tip. So we will count this as an official tip, and I'm going to read it for Benny. So this is Benny Williamson's words. His best bet is Buller at $3.10, anytime try scorer. He says career strike rate 1 in 3. And also scoring 1 in 3 this season. All right, well, you're getting $3.10. But he likes this matchup, and an 80% strike rate against the Cowboys, has scored in 4 of 5, including both times they played at Leichhardt. So, you're seeing that Benny suggesting he has increased levels of success against this opponent. And the fact that I like the Tigers and overs, I definitely like the way Benny sees that, and I'm glad that he's on that line of thinking as well. As Colt says, Dewey looks elite playing in the halves. Great and slotting in it. Yeah, and he's a big body. I'll leave you with this. I've been thinking a little bit about, this is like really kind of weird, but if you could make a rugby league team 1 to 13 and it was all clones of one person, who would be the best team? And if you did it all time, I defy anybody to pick a team that beats 13 Greg Inglis's. I think Greg Inglis, he could have been the best fullback, the best winger, the best center, the best 5'8" ever if he wanted to just dedicate his whole career to that. But you could put Inglis, like obviously edge forward, and you could put him in the props and he would hold his own. So he'd have the speed, the strength. I think Inglis would be, I guess he wouldn't be the great kicker, but I think 13 Inglis's beats anybody. Now, who else is in that argument? I'm thinking like Sonny Bill. A forward pack full of Sonny Bills, prime Sonny Bills would dominate, but does he have the speed? Like he could play center, wing, yes, fullback. I don't know, how would 13 Teddies go? Like, because you could sort of imagine Teddy being like an undersized prop, and obviously be such a handful. And the reason I just brought that up is because I reckon if you had 13 Adam Dewey's, that team would go hard because he actually can play like every position on the field, as we've seen. So you need someone that's like got that athleticism, but also the skill set. And that like Dewey's pretty fun to watch at the moment. So that's a little thought experiment. If you're a weirdo like me, you can have a think about that. Throw some other. See, someone else said Nathan Cleary's, but the problem with like he's so skillful and he could carve you up, but like, yeah, how are you going to go with like your back 3 of 3 Nathan Cleary's and your forward packs full of Nathan Cleary's? You know what I mean? Like you don't really have elite speed or size there. So that's why I feel like you've got to pick someone who's big, fast, but also has like some ball playing skills. So be keen to hear your suggestions on that one. Why don't I leave it there? 4 best bets, 4 different plays from the sharpshooters. Let's try and bounce back and go and get it in round 25. Thanks for tuning in as always, guys. Appreciate it. Continue the conversation in the comments and have a great week. I'll see you next Tuesday. Lego.